Hello there! You are watching Chapter 36 of my TearRing Saga Champions of Utena low turn count playthrough. And this map is somewhat unique within this game, because it is the only survival map in the whole game. According to the plot, this map takes place in the ruined city of Nulzaria, where Runan's father once attempted to make peace with the Canaanites, before they were all attacked by the cult of Gurxel, leaving the town in ruins. And now Runan and Senate are trying to achieve the peace that their fathers could not, while Gwenchaos is aiming to repeat the events of the last time this happened. So we are going to have to defend against the cult of Gurxel for 5 turns after meeting up with Senate. And like usual for survival maps and LTCs, this is not going to be particularly interesting. As far as my preparations go, most of the usual suspects are here. I need to point out though that despite Enter being here in the preparations menu, she is not actually going to end up being deployed directly on this map at the start. And the reasons for that I will get into in a moment. But her absence means that we are going to be relying on Lee and Mel for save staff duties in this map. Rochelle is being deployed with a Sage's Cloak because he is going to be able to promote on this map, and I think that's the last promotion we're going to be seeing in the whole game. We're also loading up Raphael on Miracle Charms because he's exceptionally good at killing things with his capped stats, and so he's going to be seeing a lot of combat during this long defense map. Mariel is coming along too, despite being unpromoted, because she has effective damage against the monsters that make up all of the starting enemies on this map. And because of the effective damage of her Starlight, she's going to be one-hit KOing pretty much all of them, even the Draco zombies. Now, I saved after the preparations for this map, even though they were fairly short and simple. And the reason for that is that the first move of the map is extremely unreliable. And that is, of course, rigging a Sing using Lyria. So Runan starts 2 moves away from the central house where he needs to go to meet up with Senate. And we obviously want to minimize turn count as much as possible, so we have to rig a Sing on him in order to get that to happen. And it's easy enough to rig a Sing on turn 1 before doing anything else, without even costing us a save staff use. So visiting this house will trigger pretty much everything to happen, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is the reappearance of Enter, who unleashes her divine dragon form, Mosa, to protect Runan. Mosa is quite useful immediately, as she is capable of using her Fierce Breath to clear out multiple enemies in a single stroke. This is the only time in the whole game where Enter feels pushed to use this form, and the reason for that is that Gwenchaos has unleashed another guardian dragon to kill everybody. That would be Rakis, the wind dragon. Rakis is the first unit in the game to demonstrate Dragon Skin's effective damage blocking property, as she is a flyer unit in addition to being a dragon unit. And her AI is programmed to go directly for Musa at all times and to only attack her. So to that end, we are going to be using Mosa to distract Rakis and try and keep her well away from the rest of our units, so that she can't kill them by catching them in the area of her Fierce Breath. But Rakis is not the only threat here, and that's what all of our other combat units are for. There are a huge number of cult units all over the map now, and we need to make sure that they don't manage to overwhelm us during the turns that they have. And the first thing that I'm going to point out is the summoners that have appeared, and we need to target them as quickly as possible, otherwise we'll be overwhelmed by monsters. Sierra warps up to deal with one of them, and she manages to get a crit with Nosferatu, which is lucky, because I forgot to put Sylphid back onto her after Narcus took it in the last map. So that was a mess up, but fortunately it's not run ending. And you can probably see that Sylphid would have cleanly one-hit KO'd that summoner. So the summoned enemies are not the only repeating enemies that we have to worry about, because every turn there are also reinforcements that appear from all around the map, and some of those are pretty nasty. In particular, a witch is going to appear that I'm going to be complaining a bit more about later. But I moved Mel down to the south in order to block off one of the reinforcement spawn points immediately, and a big part of my strategy for this map is going to be getting to as many of the other reinforcement spawn points and blocking them off too, as I can possibly manage. The game now takes revenge on me for my lucky critical hit with Sierra earlier by having her get crit by a harpy, but luckily for me this is not enough to kill Sierra in one hit, and because I have Nosferatu equipped, I get most of that health back straight away. So it's more or less the same as it would have been if I'd had Sylphid equipped there, without getting crit. Okay, so the enemy phases here really demonstrate why LTCers tend to dislike survival chapters, because there is absolutely nothing for us to defend. We don't have to be anywhere in particular, but we do have to sit through endless enemies moving every single enemy phase, which is just a lot of time being wasted with no real threat. I pretty much have my units in position, and despite the enemies being plentiful, they're not all that threatening overall. So Mosa is going to be doing a fair amount of the defending in the central area, but it unfortunately looks like I may have made a little bit of a mistake with her, because she is in fact currently in Rakis's range, and that means we're going to have to deal with a big scary dragon coming down on Runan and Co.'s head next turn. But we are going to be able to deal with that. We just need to be a bit careful about where we place our other units. Down in the southern part of this map, we have two flyers zooming around doing things, and one of those two is actually a new unit. Her name is Verna, and she is the final piece of this game's triangle attack, as in the older sister of our previous Pegasus Knights, Martel and Frau. Verna is a pretty competent unit, and she has the Slayer skill at base, so she's pretty good against all of the enemy monsters, as she demonstrated by killing a Draco zombie. The weapon that she is using is called the Salia Spear, and it is an extremely powerful lance. It has 1 to 2 range and a brave effect, and it also has one of the highest might stats in the game, so it's extremely strong, and we're going to be making good use of it on occasion in future maps. All in all, Verna is pretty darn solid, although I'm slightly disappointed that we won't be seeing the triangle attack in action during this run, on account of Martel and Frau both being over in Holmes's army at this point. So now that we've gotten this far and we pulled off the Sing back on turn 1, I want to save to lock in our progress, because there is an awful lot that can go wrong in such a long map, and I want to not have to redo that Sing rig in particular. This also means that I would be able to do some fairly reckless things on the upcoming enemy phase without having to worry about losing too much progress. And since we have Rakis coming in hot on this upcoming enemy phase, it's better safe than sorry. At this point, I am quite content to let the enemy come to me. So even though it may surprise you to see that there are several units I'm not moving, it's not going to be a problem for the strategy here. Something kind of funny happens on this enemy phase, because a bunch of summoners all use their summoning staves, but then one of them decides to just run south instead. I don't know why he decided to do this, because in my experience, summoners who choose not to summon tend to just stand still rather than moving. But it's a funny little thing, and I thought I would point it out here. And now we have Rakis moving in to attack Mosa, although she doesn't do any damage because I made sure to keep the rest of my units out of the way. Rakis' central position is now a bit annoying, and we're going to have a hard time getting Mosa to bait her away now, because all of the enemies are moving and blocking Mosa's movement. I kind of wish that all our dragons were capable of flying like Rakis's, because that would make dealing with this situation quite a bit easier. Anyway, the rest of the enemies are moving in, but none of them are doing substantial damage to any of my units. The witch decides to warp over towards Verna and miss her with her death tome, which I'm kind of grateful for, because she could have gone for a lot of much more fragile units instead. And Verna is really strong and perfectly capable of fighting the witch on the subsequent player phase. Of course, the annoying thing is that that is not the only witch. We are going to be seeing a new witch reinforcing every single turn until we can get that spawn point blocked. Honestly, this map makes me agree with Saber from Fire Emblem Gaiden. Ugh, witches. So now that that's over, it's time for us to start tidying up, and Raphael is... Wait, Raphael, what are you doing? Raphael, don't attack! That's the invincible dragon! Raphael, no! Don't do that! Oh, hang on. Wait, he seems to be doing kind of well. That's, okay. I guess this is what we're doing then. So, fortunately for my sanity, there is a way to shorten this map, and that is by taking out Rakis. But that is an extremely difficult thing to do, and there are a lot of benchmarks to meet here. Rakis has 51 resilience and 52 protection, and that means that she is completely immune to all magical attacks in the entire game. So we have to deal with her physically. There are only a handful of units with a sufficiently high strength cap to theoretically deal damage to her, and only 3 of those have access to sufficiently strong weapons to allow them to do it. And those are Raffen, Naron, and Raphael. Raffen's strength cap is 23, and that means that he is capable of dealing 1 damage per hit with a 20 might weapon. So that's clearly out. There's no way he's killing Rakis anytime soon. Naron and Raphael share a 25 strength cap, so they can both deal up to 3 damage per hit, or 1 damage per hit with an 18 might weapon like the Salius Spear, which is also somewhat viable because it has a brave effect, allowing us to deal 4 damage per combat round if we double. The trouble with that is that it's not enough to kill Rakis quickly enough. We need to deal 3 damage per hit, or 6 damage per combat round. And in order to do that, we need a 20 might weapon. And the only 20 might weapon in the game that Naron can use is the Blessed Lance, which can only be obtained from a random drop. That is way out of my reliability standards, so that's one reason why we don't use Naron here. The other is, of course, that even dealing 3 damage per hit does not give Naron enough time to kill Rakis, because we only have 5 turns to pull it off, and we can't fight Rakis on enemy phase. So in order to make this happen, we need access to the most broken skill in the entire game, which is Flurry. And Raphael is the only one of our 3 candidates who is capable of using the Flurry skill. Fortunately, Raphael is also capable of wielding the Dolharken, which is the only 20 might weapon that we are guaranteed to get during the course of the game, other than the Stonehoist, which is obviously a non-starter due to Catapulter's low strength caps. The advantage of using Dolharken is that it halves incoming damage, and that allows Raphael to take more hits and save on Miracle Charms a bit. But the disadvantage of Dolharken is that it is incredibly heavy, at 20 weight, so it weighs the same as Fierce Breath, meaning that we need to get 5 speed over Rakis's 18 in order to double her. And that's why Raphael needed to hit the 23 speed benchmark before this map. If you are lucky enough to get a Blessed Axe or Blessed Lance drop, you can use them instead to lower the speed benchmark. and that means that it's possible to use some wing potions for other purposes instead. And the final factor for this fight is durability. Even with Dol Harkin's damage halving effect, Raphael still needs to face no fewer than 10 rounds of combat with Rakus, and he has no defense against Rakus's breath. So we stack him up with miracle charms so that he can avoid lethal blows. I actually got fairly unlucky against Rakus's 58 listed hit, getting hit far too many times. And that means that in the second round of combat against Rakus, I am not able to give him enough miracle charms to guarantee his survival, because both of my potential physic users needed to use the save staff in order to allow us to rig a sing proc and then another 5-round flurry. 1 dodge out of 5 at a 58 listed hit isn't too bad though. And you'll notice that I had Runan positioned carefully to give his charm bonus and the Lance Mirror bonus to Raphael during both of the 2 combats he had to do against Rakus. And so with that, the impossible is done. Rakus is defeated in order to complete this map in 3 turns. Following this, Enter leaves her ring for Runan and leaves our army for good. And we also receive a Ward Blade. This is the reward for leaving Stephanie alive and talking to her with Runan back in chapter 34, and we're very glad to have it. That is all for this video. I will see you next time.